Hey, so you may have seen this book before, Overcoming Dyslexia. You take a look at it and you're thinking, holy cow, that's a really big book. And you know what? It is a really big book, but it's one of the most important books as a tutor that I feel that you can check out. So, without further ado, you guys, we're going to chat all about why you should be taking a look at this book, Overcoming Dyslexia. Now, you might notice here that this is the second edition. There was a first edition, and it was probably written, I don't know, like 10, 20 years ago, this book was written, where Sally Shaywitcz was really one of those pivotal people that was really deep into working with kids with dyslexia. Not only that, she was put onto the National Reading Panel report to be able to take a look at all of the research. If there is one person who knows a lot about dyslexia, it is definitely Sally Shaywitcz. Not only that, you guys, I really like how she gives some tips, not only for for teachers that they can use inside of their classrooms, but also for parents as well and what they can do. And she really goes into a lot of depth with this book, into the history of dyslexia. How did we know it first existed? All of that great stuff inside of here. There's one good key takeaway that I think everyone who takes a look at this book can all take away from. And that is that early diagnosis is one of the most pivotal, crucial elements to a dyslexic's life. As each year goes on for the dyslexic without being diagnosed, the gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger for them. Not only that, but their self-esteem gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And we all know how important being able to have a growth mindset is. Well, as these kids continue to struggle, their growth mindset decreases. What they see as possible decreases. How they feel about themselves decreases. In this book, she really points out the important part of getting an IQ test for these kids because they need to see how smart they are. A dyslexic, if they are dyslexic, that will go through the process of diagnosis. And she goes through that in great detail inside of here. All the different assessments that are used, the feedback from the people in the child's life, the parents, the teachers, the tutors, anybody who plays a role in that child's life, and how they can help with being able to identify very quickly if a child has dyslexia. No longer do we have to wait till third grade. See, like in the school system where I came from, back in 2010, and that it's going to affect their comprehension. But with dyslexics, they can make a higher level number of mistakes because they are actually reading for meaning. Like it becomes very natural for them. So you'll find that their comprehension is a lot higher than what they sound like when they read. But at the end of the day, this is what I tell all my dyslexics. At the end of the day, what matters the most is that you are understanding what you're reading. And if it takes you a little bit longer to be able to read it, but you understand it, you have unlocked reading for life, and you're going to be able to overcome so much. I find that my kids that do overcome dyslexia, that they transition to different people. They become more secure in who they are and what it is that they do. They enjoy life more. They actually do find pleasure sometimes from even reading. Now, not all dyslexics are going to enjoy reading. Picking up books for pleasure may not be their thing. But the cool thing is we don't have to just learn from books anymore, right? And I think that's so awesome. We've got tools for them. So as they get older, they then can start using some of those tools. But in the early days, it's really pivotal. We teach them to the full extent, all out, reading, how to read, how to master the reading concept so that it's not something that hinders them later on in life. So really awesome stuff inside of here. And she gives examples of different kids and adults that have struggled and what their story was, what the process was like. And she says over and over and over again inside of this book that she says over and over again when she's talking about these kids that, they all have this low self-esteem, but as soon as she asks them, like, on the IQ chart, where do you think you lie on here? Like, here's like the smartest person in the world, and here's, the lowest IQ. Where do you think you fall? And they always kind of like point it to themselves, like below, middle, or middle kind of area. And then when she actually showed them and she said, "You're here," and she could show them how high they were, how high their IQ was, and that there were things that they could do to become better readers, all of a sudden, it was like a light bulb had opened. And I know a lot of parents, they really struggle with this idea of, do I get my child diagnosed? I don't want my child pulled out of class. I don't want my child to be seen as different. And there are definitely benefits to getting diagnosed as dyslexia. And she talks about that inside of this book. We've got Maria Jeffers in the house today. Thank you for joining us, Maria. I really appreciate it. She says the special ed supervisor gathered all the teaching staff and were gathered in the audience and was given a brief description. And that was that. It was so very sad. Yeah, there are a lot of schools today who still do not believe that dyslexia exists. And it's a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of reading up on it. It's a lack of working with kids and being able to understand what they're really struggling with. We really can see the language difficulties that a dyslexic has when you start working with them. And some are more severe than others. And not only that, but our dyslexics will often get diagnosed with other things before they even get diagnosed as having dyslexia. Dyslexia will often come with ADHD and high levels of anxiety. And so some of those things are easier for people to see than the dyslexia, because if they're getting good instruction, you can't see the dyslexia as easily. It just seems like it might come off as, oh, my kid's just lazy. They don't want to read. It might come off as, oh, they're just guessing at the word. They're using just the beginning of the word and then they guess, and they're not really actually reading. There are a lot of gifted students that have this disability and are never tested for their giftedness. I so agree, Maria. It is so, so tragic. And these kids, they end up going through life thinking that they're not smart. And I think that's the biggest hindrance of it all, that they're thinking that they're dumb as they go through all of this. And they're one of the brightest people in the world. You could take a look online and see all the different people, in the world that, are well-known people that have dyslexia and how successful they've been able to be. I think that sharing some of these stories with kids is really important so that they can really see that, hey, this doesn't have to be something that stops you from getting the success that you want in life. Now, inside of this book, she'll talk about some of the programs that are effective with teaching kids with dyslexia. I love it. Fantastic. She does talk about, last week I talked about Head Sprout. If you didn't see that video on Kids A to Z, Rad's Kids, definitely check that out, because inside of that book, inside of that program, that Learning A to Z suite, they have the opportunity for you to purchase Head Sprout, and Head Sprout is very effective with helping kids with dyslexia. So definitely check that out. Fabulous tool I use with my students. I have found that my students, though, if you ever give them a computer program, you need to have an adult sitting by them, because otherwise our kids will get click heavy. They just want to click. And you want them actually doing what the program is saying. If they need to say a word, they're saying it out loud. If they need to, click, they need to click in the right place. Those little things, having an adult right there to help them through it is going to be awesome. The other thing I find that as dyslexics, because there's sometimes with my dyslexics, there is a slower processing, the speed that it expects the kids to go at sometimes is a little bit too fast. And so you almost have to skip through a couple of the activities just so that isn't something that they have to do over and over and over and over again. It's already a lot of repetition built into the program. So you don't want a program to take any longer than it needs to, so that these kids can close that gap as quick as possible. She also talked about inside of here how technology can help, that it's really important to make sure that our kids do get the best instruction early on, but then come middle school and high school, they're learning about accommodations and how to be able to meet their needs through accommodations, through different things as well. She also talks about how to protect the legal rights of these kids. They are going to need more time on a time test, right? And so by getting your child diagnosed as having dyslexia, if they do have it, it takes away that time. They're given more time to complete tests in school, the state exams, all of that. And when they go into college, they also will qualify for extra help and also have some of those time limits taken away from them so that they're able to still do the work in a manner that works for them. And I think that is so, so important. Yeah, Beth said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will go its whole life believing it's stupid. You guys have seen that picture, right? Where they show like a fish like climbing a tree, like out of water. And it's very unfair to do that to a beautiful child, isn't it? It's just so unfair to set them up for that kind of failure just because they don't learn in a certain way, right? Our brains were not built to be readers. We were built to be communicators, but we were not built to be readers. That was something that came later on, that we discovered that another way we could communicate with each other was through writing, and we all came up with our own ways of doing that. Some of us are a little bit more phonetic than others, like Spanish is much more phonetic than other languages. The other thing that's really important to know is that it's not just kids who speak English that can have dyslexia. Dyslexia can exist in any language. So I definitely think that this is a must read for kids, that for tutors, for teachers, for parents. I highly suggest that my parents, if I do think they have dyslexia, I always send a link to this particular book as well. I've put a link inside of the description of this video so that if you want to pick up this book on Amazon, you absolutely can. The very first time I went through it, I listened to it on Audible because I felt like, okay, I just kind of want to take in the information. My second time around reading the book, I purchased the book, I highlighted the book, I wrote all over the book. And this is also a book that we go through together in the Reading Interventionist program. And that's because all of the things that you see that are embedded in my Reading Interventionist program, they're based off of best practices, research, and evidence. And she talks about the difference between research-based and evidence-based. So research-based means that there's been research that has been done where we're able to draw some really good, effective conclusions and then learn how to come up with strategies that are going to be effective for our students. Evidence-based means that it stands the test of time, that there is evidence that says that when you continue to do this, this, and this, that you get results. And one of the things that I've been able to do is be able to get results with my students. Do my dyslexic students go a little bit slower? Sometimes they do, not all the time. Sometimes they do go slower. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than 8 to 12 hours for me to close the gap for them. However, not all students that come my way have dyslexia, and they're able to go through the reading processes pretty quickly once you can identify like what those gaps are. The dyslexic student, once they get past some of those phonological deficits, they can actually start going up the reading levels pretty quickly. And so it's really important that we're continuing to have them think at a higher level and really challenge their thinking. They work really hard when it comes to the reading process, but there's nothing wrong with their thinking. They are extremely bright and very intelligent beings. So you guys definitely check out Overcoming Dyslexia. If you haven't had a chance to sign up, in about 10 minutes, I'm actually going to be holding and hosting a webinar called How to Close the Reading Gap, a full year with 8 to 12 hours of instruction. If you haven't signed up for it yet, click the link inside of the description. Come join me, and I will continue to share more information about how we can help kids that are struggling with reading. Thanks for joining me today, you guys. And I'm so excited because on Thursday, we have an author that is going to be sharing with us about language-based learning disabilities that kids have, dyslexia being one of them. And he's going to share all about what he does. And I'm really excited to have him featured on our show. His name's Daniel, and he will be here on Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. So come join us then. Bye, everyone.